Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This film came out in 2016. It was directed by Gareth Edwards. So this movie felt like the first plunge into a new direction for the Star Wars franchise because this is Disney's first attempt at making a Star Wars movie that is a standalone Star Wars film, as in it is not a part of the core nine. Why am I reviewing this, you might ask? Well, it's because obviously I reviewed the 9 Star Wars films last year and I ranked them, and it was just really fun to do that just because it felt like this weird way to condense everything. It's just like a time capsule. But despite those reviews, I did get a lot of shit from people who were shocked that I never saw Rogue One. And the reason I never saw Rogue One is just because I don't care. But now, having revisited all 9 of the Star Wars films, as I said, I feel like I'm too invested in the downfall of the franchise at this point. So I don't know. I felt like I really needed to give this one a shot. This movie had a really polarizing reaction from people, both negatively and positively, from people that I know and I really respect their opinion. So that's part of what intrigued me all the more. And this story is just, how the Republic was able to retrieve the Death Star plans, which, is briefly mentioned in the A New Hope, the opening crawl. But yeah, fuck this movie. Fuck this movie. I'm sorry, y'all. I really, really did not like it. It's not the worst Star Wars movie by any stretch. Quite honestly, I think it's better than I think the 3 Disney ones, like Force Awakens and the other 2. But I think the reason why this movie really made me mad is because I think I really see the potential, whereas I did not see the potential in like the J.J. Abrams ones and The Last Jedi. Rogue One is a very half-baked, very, very confused work. It is constantly pivoting, I feel like, between 2 different styles without committing to either one of them or understanding either one of them fully. It is so indecisive to grating levels, and it wants to be different from the Disney sequels, which I really do admire and appreciate. But like I said, it's really unsure of how to define those distinctions clearly in a way that feels convincing and bold and just committed. And the lack of confidence in that point of view just results in more of a whimper, and you don't want that for like a big blockbuster movie like this. It should be like a major statement, I think. But no, this movie is a slog. It is a boring mess. And it's bland. It's so bland. And for the record, I'm not one of those people that thinks that all the new Star Wars movies have to carry that same sort of nostalgic kind of Flash Gordon style quality that the originals did. I actually welcome it at this point, but this movie is just wavering so often that it makes me want to hit somebody. It's really lazy in certain areas, and then in other ways it's trying to be like this artful, majestic, poetic type of thing. It's just really strange. And from what I know, it was a very difficult production, and to be honest, I know very little of the background on that. But it's clear, I think, when you watch the trailers that there's just a lot in the movie that was maybe left on the cutting room floor. And I bet you, if I could see all of the footage, I bet you we could cut together a much better movie than what we have here. A compelling movie. And again, the reason this movie really got under my skin, I think, is just because I think it was totally possible to save it, and I can absolutely see the potential in the material here. This movie could have been awesome. First rule of business is they need to make the characters interesting. That was the movie's first and major misstep. Give them good reasons to interact with each other, and give them stakes that are a lot more dramatic than they seem here. Beef up the pacing a little bit. For the love of God, get rid of all the exposition scenes. There's just exposition, 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 and it's clogging the movie. Give us some more scenes of action that are peppered in between all of these scenes of exposition. Show us what you are explaining to us is very important in storytelling, I think. And this is obviously a very important story that led to something very important that we would see very soon in the Star Wars franchise. And yet here, it's like the plot feels as if it has no real weight to it, no meaning. And this is an important story, obviously, that leads into a really, really crucial aspect of the Star Wars franchise. And yet none of the scenes are compelling me forward. And when there is actual action going on in the movie, a lot of it does feel very hollow to me. It just feels like a bunch of cardboard cutouts. It's almost like how to execute the hero's journey template poorly, but you think that you're nailing it. That is totally the vibe I got from this movie, from the writing of it. I think that When it comes to the story, I think the focus should be to make it very, very simple. And in a way, it kind of is, and yet they still somehow manage to make it aggressively boring. Like when I watched A New Hope, I was never confused during it. And here, I felt like I was very confused easily, and it might be just because I was zoning out a lot, but it felt unnecessarily complicated in its presentation. Now, I will say I did like the opening scene. When I saw it, I actually had some hope for this movie. I was like, oh, this might actually be kind of good. I think it looks really, really great. Just cinematically, it gave me a sense of like, ooh, look at this. This is something new. We're really deviating and we're going more for that like Kurosawa, David Lean type of look, maybe Sergio Leone as well. And yeah, I got it. Instantly, I got it. It wants you to know that this is a very different Star Wars. This is a very self-serious Star Wars that is going to be a lot more rich, maybe artistically and aesthetically, and it's going to be a lot less of, more that Flash Gordon serialized type of feel, the old Star Wars. And again, it's like, awesome, let's go. And yeah, opening concept is really cool. I do wish that the scene were longer. I wish it really stretched the tension in more interesting ways, and we can really establish the relationship more between Galen and the Empire, but also, create more of that emotional thread between him and his daughter. It's very reminiscent of the opening of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in so far as its style is concerned. And I thought, all right, obviously something really important is happening here. The young girl is being separated from her father, and it did feel maybe a little bit abrupt, but at the same time I was thinking, well, I'm sure we will get more background on this as we go, as the movie progresses, but no, not really. Because the film is so disorienting so far as how it wants to tell her story, and so I don't feel any sense of tension for her, and everything in the movie just kind of feels on the same level. And of course, I say that a lot. That's a problem with a lot of movies these days, modern movies. Like when Darth Vader comes in this movie, it's so undramatic. It's almost like he just kind of like pops up kind of in the frame and you're like, oh, okay, that's Darth Vader. It should be so dramatic. I will never forget the moment I first saw Darth Vader as a kid in A New Hope. It is just such a moment. And here he just looks really lame as fuck. He has about as much charisma here as some guy in an office break room. Honestly, that's how it felt. And I mean it when I say this truly feels like kind of taking a bad tour through the hero's journey archetypes, because these plots don't feel organic. Obviously, when characters like this show up, it does not feel organic. And it's like they're hitting all the beats, and yet there's no oomph behind it. I feel bad for the actors because there's a lot of really good actors in this movie. They're just not given anything to work with, nothing to grab onto so far as their characters are concerned. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to strip it all back, trying to go for that like more minimalistic sort of drama there. That's more gritty. It's more like this is war. But again, I don't think they have a real understanding of how to pull that type of tone off. And all it does is make me yearn for the silly banter in the other Star Wars movies, the past Star Wars movies, where obviously there's a lot of bickering, there's a lot of, tension and chaos, and it's really fun. And admittedly, I never thought that I would say this, but I found myself defending the Disney sequels at a certain point during this movie, just because at least, yeah, they were able to interact and it made them interesting. It's like as characters, you at least knew who Finn was and you got a sense of what his objective was, how he felt about Poe, how he felt about Rey. You knew what Rey's objectives were as well. I mean, she sucks, but at least you understand where she's coming from. You get a sense of who she is before she has her call to adventure. So it gives, you a reason to root for her. Here, the main character, Jin, as I said in the beginning, she's separated from her father, and then suddenly we cut and she's an adult. And it's like, okay, we're completely disoriented in that. We're just right in the middle of her story, having no idea how she arrived at where she is in this point of her life. And she's at a very serious point. And to me, that feels very important to get a sense of like how it's felt to have to be this independent woman all this time. How has it hardened her? How has, missing her father changed her? And, to me, even if you want to change Star Wars, to me, the point of Star Wars fully is more like the familial relationships. That's the core emotion of it that I think people are drawn to. She's a device. All the characters here just act as devices. Really, the only character with any personality here is the robot, and I don't know. I thought he sucked just because, they're trying to do more of that like British irreverent type of humor, and that it's very reminiscent of the old Star Wars, and yet it just here. Again, it wasn't landing. It just felt really grating, and he felt rude and awkward. I think just unlikable. And part of it is because he has nothing to bounce off of. He just says something and it's like, okay. And so his emotional arc gets completely swallowed. When he died, I was like, thank God. And Jin here is just, going through the motions of her own story. It's almost like she's learning definitions the night before a test, but she never gets to apply them. So it's like she's only learned them so she can ace the test, and yet she really has no idea what they mean. I think we needed to fill the spaces so far as what's driving this war, the emotion in particular, just because I don't think that the emotional thread between Jin and her father is necessarily enough. I mean, it's very important. I think it's the core of it, but I think there needs to be more. There just needs to be more of a pressing intent. Each time you go to a new world, a new location, it feels like the objectives of why you are on that planet need to be very clear to us. I think you can absolutely still go for minimalism and realism so far as tone is concerned without being this monotone. But like I said, this movie, like all of the Disney Star Wars movies that I've seen so far, it just feels like they're another version of playing house. It's like you have all of these guys, these actors, and they're walking in the Star Wars costumes, and they have like laser blasters strapped to their sides, and like the music's going, they're walking on these big ships, strutting, looking badass, and yet they haven't earned any of it. They don't even understand it. Even though this movie may be better for me than those other Disney films, I do think, it's similar. It's just disguising its intent maybe a little bit more cleverly. It's just cheap manipulative tactics to keep a demographic interested in a franchise. And I don't know, when it comes to this franchise, the entire mythology, especially when it comes to the Skywalkers, it's incredibly faulty to begin with. It feels like it was always kind of making itself up as it goes along, and I don't think it was ever meant to be taken that seriously. So I do think that if you're going to approach a singular Star Wars story like this, I think your best bet, the way to win people over in my eyes, is to really simplify things. Just let go of all the things that you think you need to do and make an emotionally compelling movie. Just work within the confines of this little idea here, which is, again, a very interesting idea that's leading us up to A New Hope. Be able to answer very basic questions like, who is Jin? Why is she here? What is her objective? And why should we care about her? Tell me a story that keeps me interested, that gives her conflicts, barriers to break through. That means something to me as an audience member, but it's working to become a part of something greater. And when it comes to the second half of the movie, in some ways, I feel like it kind of works better, and in other ways, I think it really doesn't. I think it just kind of reveals all the problems that I have with the movie. It's obviously going for this very apocalypse now, Saving Private Ryan type of vibe, but it's still fucking Star Wars, and it's still goofy as shit, and so all of that is just really confusing to me. It's supposed to be dramatic and serious, and yet I feel nothing. There are, these characters that are obviously introduced to us in the Test Allies and Enemies period, and when they die and it's supposed to be all dramatic, I'm like, oh no, what was your name? I don't even know. But the ending shot of this movie, it was, I think, maybe the most bone-chilling, most haunting final moment in any Star Wars movie I have ever seen. And that is really saying something, because I have seen The Rise of Skywalker. And yes, in a way, I almost feel like the moment where Rey says she's Rey Skywalker is almost not as bad as this one. This one just, it got under my skin. I'm referring to, of course, the final image in the movie. It's the moment where Princess Leia, a young Princess Leia, brought to life through the magic of CGI, says in a close-up, hope. It was terrifying. Just the creepy face rendering that's not quite right. And you all have seen it if you've seen all of these types of movies and the deep fakes and such. But just it looks like Carrie Fisher, but it's just off enough to fuel your nightmares. Very Lynchian in style, I feel. Why, for the love of God, would you do that? Why would somebody make an artistic decision like that on purpose? I'm sorry, I don't understand it. I will never understand it in these Disney movies. And I also don't understand why the transition was so abrupt at the end. It's like all this stuff happens and it's just like, we're right into A New Hope. But yeah, that final image just really was like the knife in the coffin of just fuck this movie. Really, fuck this movie. I hate it. I hate it. And like I said, I can see the potential. I want to fix it is the thing. I really feel like there's a good movie in here, and that makes it more tragic, I think. I will say I admire certain things about it, and even artistically, there were things that I liked about it. Just, again, it wasn't committing or pushing far enough into what I think it wanted to be. Where would I rank this? That's a tough one. I'd have to think about it. I do think it's better than the main Disney sequels. It might even be better for me than like Attack of the Clones. I hate Attack of the Clones, so it's like a low bar, but like, yeah, I don't think this is the worst. But you know, with Star Wars, really, I only think there's like 2 good Star Wars movies out there, maybe 3. The rest, it's kind of bad. So that is my review for Rogue One, and I hope people are happy that I finally saw it. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commissioned portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that's something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.